I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing to you today Luisa Chavez from NOMON, who will be talking to us about policy applications of mobile phone data. Over to you, Luisa.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see it? So let's start. So as Kelly was mentioned, I'm Luisa Chavez. It's a pleasure to be here. And today we're going to talk about mobile phone data for policy applications. This is the second two of our course. So a brief overview. Today we're going to talk about overview of MPD for policy applications. And in specific, we are going to focus on three groups of indicators per se: measuring sustainable development goals, population statistics and mobility analysis, and socio-economic applications, more specifically poverty maps. And then we're going to end up with conclusions and recommendations. So let's start and with the overview of MPD and policy applications. Mobile phone data has become a valuable source for producing statistics across a wide range of policy applications in areas where it's critical to provide reliable and up-to-date indicators on population presence and mobility patterns. MPD plays a key role. What makes this data so powerful is the ability to generate highly detailed and accurate statistics. It allows us to collect information quickly in a cost-effective way, while also increasing the frequency for update information. In short, mobile phone data is opening new doors for innovation in how we measure, understand, and respond to social dynamics. Let's take a closer look at how MPD is being explored. Many national statistical offices have already launched initiatives to integrate MPD into their work. To guide these efforts, the United Nations has identified 6 key areas where mobile phone data can be especially valuable. These are tourist statistics, migration statistics, census and dynamic population, displacement in disaster context, information society, and finally, transport commuting statistics. Together, the 6 areas show just how impactful mobile phone data can be when applied to official statistics around the world. So for this 1-hour webinar, we are going to focus on 3 main groups of application. The first one is measuring sustainable development goals. Here, MPD can provide valuable indicators that help us monitor progress toward global development targets, in specific about information society to measure digital inclusion and connectivity. The second group that we're going to talk about is population statistics and mobility analysis. This includes applications such as understanding where people live, how they move, and how these patterns change over time. We are going to talk about dynamic population mapping, migration and disaster management, public health and epidemiology, transport and tourism. Third, we're going to talk about socio-economic applications with a special focus on poverty mapping. By analyzing mobile phone data alongside other sources, we can get a much clearer picture of social and economic inequalities, which in turn help us design better informed policies. So in the next part of the sections, we will dive into these 3 groups of information and see concrete examples of how mobile phone data is being applied today. Let's begin with the first group, measuring sustainable development goals. Mobile phone data can play a powerful role in helping us monitor progress toward global development targets. One area where this is particularly relevant is the information society. The internet has become an increasingly important tool for accessing public information. But despite the growth in networks, service and applications, access to information and in communication technology is still far from equally distributed. Many people cannot yet fully benefit from the potentials of the internet. In some cases, mobile network coverage exists, but actual internet remains low, whether due to prohibited prices, lack of skill, or even limited availability of local content. By analyzing mobile phone data, we can gain insights into digital connectivity, access to internet, and levels of inclusion in the digital economy. These indicators are essential to understand how societies are evolving, how digital gaps are being reduced, and how we are moving toward a more connected and inclusive world. This is where sustainable development goals indicators come into play. For example, indicator 17.8.1 measures the proportion of individuals who use the internet from any location in the past 3 months. This gives us a snapshot of how effective population are engaging with the digital world. Another key measurement is indicator 9.c.1, which looks at the proportion of population covered by mobile network, aiming to increase access to information and communication technologies and to provide universal and affordable internet access. It is particularly valuable to support infrastructure and resource planning. Let's look at an example, the proportion of individuals using the internet in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This project compared MPD data with a household survey. And the comparison between the MPD data study and the household survey at the aggregate levels showed remarkable similarities, with difference of only 1% in the metropolitan region of Rio de Janeiro. This means that the operator customer base is broad and representative enough to reflect the population's mobile use patterns. The results, for example, reveal access in the city of Rio de Janeiro ranged between 94 and 96%. Other cities, such as Niterói, Petrópolis, or Nova Iguaçu, had even higher levels, between 96 and 100%. On the other hand, lower levels were observed in Cachoeira de Macau, Taguá, and Patuaferes, ranging from 90 to 92%. These numbers help us understand how internet access distributes over several areas in the city. Another example comes from Bali in Indonesia. When comparing the results from the socio-economic survey, SOSENAS, with the mobile phone data, we observe a slightly larger difference than in the example of Rio de Janeiro. Overall, the mobile phone data estimated show a higher proportion of internet users than the household surveys reported. Here, one important factor to consider is the technology. Not all 2G cell phones can access internet, which may have caused the MPD estimates to be slightly overestimated. This highlights the importance of accounting for different types of technology, 2G, 3G, 4G, and even 5G when analyzing digital connective data. Nevertheless, this example clearly demonstrates the potential of mobile phone data to provide timely and detailed insights into digital connectivity. MP data can complement traditional surveys and help policymakers identify regions where internet access still needs improvement. Now let's talk about indicator 9.c.1, which measures the proportion of population covered by by mobile network. We have here another example from Indonesia, where we can see the difference in coverage between 3G and 4G network. As the map shows, 3G coverage is widespread across many regions in Indonesia. However, 4G coverage is more concentrated in the southwest part of the country, leaving other areas with limited access to high-speed mobile connectivity. Here again, it's important to highlight the difference between technology. 2G and 3G networks were primarily designed for voice and basic data service, while 4G introduced high-speed OIP connectivity. This is enable broadband internet, video streaming, and advanced mobility applications. By understanding this difference, policymakers and network operators can better plan connectivity improvements, target infrastructure investments, and work toward more equitable access to advanced mobile service across the country. To end this section, I want to highlight a slightly different use case that is also connected with population mapping, access to internet and mobile connection during crisis. The example we're looking now is the blackout that occurred in Spain and Portugal on April 28th of this year. Mobile phone data made it possible to understand the timeline of the blackout and how it affected people's lives compared to a normal day. For instance, data show that around 22 million people were away from home in the moment of the blackout, and 12 million were more than 10 kilometers from their home, needing to find a way back without electrical systems. This type of information is extremely valuable. It helps authorities track down people's movement, understand the scale of the disruption, and improve emergency response and plan for future crises. Now let's move to the second group of indicators, population statistics and mobility analysis, starting with dynamic population mapping. What is dynamic population mapping? Dynamic population mapping is the practice of estimating where people are located at various points of time using mobile phone data. Unlike traditional methods, which rely on static census data, this approach captures the actual presence and movement of population over time. Accurate population data is critical for governments to plan service, allocate resources, and respond effectively to crises. Beyond that, accurate population data forms the basis of most other statistics, whether providing a reference base for the calculation or setting the frames for the surveys. Dynamic mapping addresses two key questions. How can we map population dynamically without relying solely on surveys or census? And how can we map dynamically behaving population, showing where people are at any given moment, what we call de facto population? This method is specifically valuable in situations that require timely data, such as natural disasters, epidemics, or conflicts, where understanding real-time population movement is crucial. Now we're going to see a few examples of use cases that are related to resident population mapping, daytime and de facto population mapping, event management, infrastructure and resources planning, creation of dynamic sample frames for survey, and census. Here we have a real example from Estonia. In 2012, the Estonian police and border guard need accurate and up-to-date population statistics. Their goal was to better plan the distribution of patrol units across the country. They turned to mobile phone data to estimate de facto population. But they need more than just total population accounts. They need to understand seasonal and weekly fluctuations and distinguish between permanent residents, domestic visitors such as workers and students, foreign visitors, and even people in transit. Segmentations that you can have by analyzing long-term mobile data. In this video, you can see an example of dynamic population map in Estonia. As we mentioned earlier, MPD-based de facto population map allows us to classify presence in subgroups: residents, works, regular visitors, tourists, and those just passing through. This kind of information is useful for infrastructure and resource planning. For example, ensuring that communities have access to public service requires knowing not only how many residents live in an area, but also how many works, tourists, and people in transit are present at different times. In another application, MPD can be used to identify second homes, a crucial input for planning resources in regions with seasonal populations. This type of analysis can also support event management, helping authorities prepare for crowd management activities. Another example I would like to share is about census data. Census are the foundation of many policy decisions, so ensuring their quality is crucial. But traditional surveys are costly, time-consuming, and must be planned well in advance. To conduct national household surveys, an accurate sample frame is essential, and this is where mobile phone data can make a real difference. MPD can also serve as a complement to the sensor. It doesn't depend on registered databases or requires no physical contact, which makes it much more resilient to disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic or even conflict situations. It also helps fill the gaps between census. For instance, mobile phone data can support population projections, highlight undercounted groups, and add value features like daytime population, migration flows, or commuting patterns. Looking forward, there is even potential for innovative data-driven census that combine administrative records with big data, offering reliable signs of life when even registers are incomplete or missing. That said, it's important to recognize the limitations. Mobile phone data is lower among some groups, like children, elderly people, women, or poorest households, which can introduce bias. So while NPD is a powerful supplement, it should always be carefully used and combined with other data sources. Now let's talk about migration and disaster management. When it comes to disasters, the most common indicators are the number of direct deaths, injuries, and people affected. Of those indicators, the affected population is the hardest one to define and measure. For example, the extent to which people are displaced, whether evacuated or reallocated to nearby regions, has not been well captured in traditional statistics. Traditional surveys face big limitations in this context. They aren't designed to track large-scale population movements across time and space, and they take too much time to prepare and implement. This means data collection often can start quickly enough after a disaster, when populations are already moving rapidly across larger areas. While with mobile phone data, it becomes possible not only to estimate the scale of population movements, but also to see where people are going during displacement, how long they stay in these locations, and when they begin returning to their affected areas. This provided a far clearer picture of population dynamics in times of crisis, and a much more strong foundation for targeted responses. Let's start with a migration example for COVID-19 pandemic. To limit the spread of the virus, many governments introduced strict mobility restrictions. While these measures were designed to reduce movement, in reality, they triggered an unintended migration from urban areas. Being able to monitor such changes in population distributions as to assess if and when populations return to their normal lives was crucial for understanding the full impact of lockdowns on society. Take Madrid as a case study. During the restrictions, the population remaining in Madrid dropped by around 10%, with a significant increase in migration from the Madrid region to almost other regions in Spain, but especially on Andalusia, Valencia, and Castilla y León. Another important example is migration linked to climate risk. Take Bangladesh, a country highly vulnerable to cyclones and sea level rise. This exposed millions of people to inundation risks, making climate change a key driver of migration from environment stress areas. But quantify both short-term and long-term movements across large populations has always been difficult because traditional data sources simply cannot capture mobility at the necessary spatial and temporal detail. In this case, mobile phone data was used to identify and quantify migration caused by climate stress. It provides insights into the incidents, direction, seasonality, and duration of the movements, critical information for design effective mitigation and adaptation programs. To end this section, let me share the case of Haiti. On January 12, 2010, Haiti was struck by a devastating earthquake that triggered massive population movement out of the capital, one of the hardest hit areas. Relief efforts suffered by the lack of reliable information about displacement. By analyzing mobile phone data, research estimated that around 630,000 people had left the capital within just 19 days of the earthquake. The destinations matched closely with a UN survey carried out later, showing that the method used was reliable. More recently, in August 2021, another earthquake struck Haiti, followed by the tropical depression Grace. Together, these disasters caused widespread destruction, displacing thousands of people and damaged or destroying over 137,000 homes. Here, mobile phone data was again used, this time to track changes of home location and the distance people travel compared to the pre-area of the earthquake. These examples highlight how mobile phone data can provide timely, reliable insights into population displacements, supporting both crisis response and long-term recovery plans. Now let's move to public health and epidemiology. Traditionally, static population data, such as census, are used to analyze exposure to environmental health factors and social contact indicators. But these data sets have an important limitation, as I have already said before. They don't account for people's movement, and even though population distributions change over time. As a result, local planners struggle to access exposure data that is up-to-date, comprehensive, and detailed enough for decision-making. By integrating MPD data with other local data sets, we can generate spatial information on how people's density change dynamically. For example, the difference between daytime and nighttime population distributions. This provides urban planners, infrastructure developments, and emergency service with better inputs for adaptation orientation planning. The use of mobile phone data can help generate the indicators such as population exposure to environmental health factors, for instance, population, noise, or heat waves. It can also help generate social contact indicator for understanding disease spreads and support epidemiological models. An example of using mobile phone data to access exposure to pollution is the air quality platform of the city of Madrid. This platform combines mobile phone data with a simulation model and air quality indicators to provide a detailed understanding of which regions of the city are most exposed to pollutions at different times of the day. This allows the city to identify high-risk populations and design target interventions to reduce health impacts. Another example is the Me Precisa project, an open cloud platform designed to manage health crises in complex scenarios in Spain. It combines mobile phone data with multiple other sources to model exposure to contaminants and track disease spread. The project has three main use cases: mobility, air quality, and health, similar to the air quality platform of the city of Madrid; social contact and the spread of epidemics; and mobility and wastewater monitoring. By integrating these datasets, My Precisa platform will provide actionable insights to support public health decision-making during crisis. To end this section, I want to talk about the cholera outbreak in Haiti. In 2021, Haiti confirmed its first cholera outbreak in more than a century, affecting several communities around the city of Saint Mark. Authorities and relief agents were concerned that people living in the outbreak area could quickly spread the disease to other parts of the country. By analyzing mobile phone data could be processed within just 12 hours of receiving the information from the operator. This allows authorities to identify the destination of people living in the affected area and anticipate where cholera might spread first. This case demonstrates how mobile phone data provides enough tool to improve planning, resilience, and public health response during emergencies. Another important area that currently relies on mobile phone data is the transportation area. Transportation agencies around the world are increasingly using mobile phone data either as a primary source for reporting, planning, and operation, or as a supplement to traditional sources like travel surveys and ticketing data. Some of the key benefits of using mobile phone data in transportations include lower data acquisition costs compared to traditional sources, higher accuracy in transportation statistics and performance indicators, greater spatial and temporal resolution leading to better planning decisions, enhanced predictive and operational capabilities to improve passenger experience by using historical data, improve situational awareness for more informed operational decisions. It's important to note that mobile phone data will not replace traditional transport statistics in the near future. For instance, information such as detailed trip purpose collected by traditional surveys cannot yet be replicated using mobile phone data. However, mobile phone data can complement surveys by filling gaps between years without surveys and providing higher resolution data for areas not covered. For example, lower and middle income countries might conduct travel surveys every 5 or 10 years, with mobile phone data providing insights in between years. The most common indicators generated using mobile phone data are orange destination matrix, be it of general mobility or segmented by transport mode, trip frequency, and trip distributions. Some typical cases include mobility planning, tourist management, transport concessions for highways, for example, shared mobility systems, traffic management policies, competition studies or demand studies for the implementation of new systems, transport hubs, and mobility monitoring. For example, the World Bank has been using mobile phone data to support transport planning in several cities across Latin America. The first project, launched in 2021, aimed to achieve two main objectives. First, to understand the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in mobility in two cities, Bogotá and Buenos Aires. And second, to develop a methodology for using mobile phone data to generate mobility indicators across different Latin America cities. Using mobile phone data, the project produced our destination matrix for 2019, 2020, and 2021, allowing authorities to evaluate how the pandemic affected mobility habits in the metropolitan areas of Bogotá and Buenos Aires. These matrices were segmented by transport mode by integrating mobile phone data with survey data and smart car data from public transport authorities. Following the success of this approach, the World Bank replicated the project in other cities, including Medellín in Bogotá, in Colombia, Asunción in Paraguay, and now currently undergoing in Rio de Janeiro, Florianópolis, and Belo Horizonte in Brazil. The city of Salvador in Brazil has also used mobile phone data to better understand mobility patterns in the metropolitan area. The analysis covered 15 days in 2024, including weekdays, weekend, and carnival period. The study segmented mobility by time of the day, trip purpose, trip distance, social demographic information, and transport mode, including public buses, both urban and metropolitan buses, subway, and ferries. One particular interest aspect was the analysis during Carnival. MPD or mobile phone data allowed the city to track from where visitors were coming from and to distinguish between the mobility patterns of residents, visitors, and professional drivers such as taxi, Uber, and freight service. This provides crucial insights for planning and managing transport demand during one of the busiest events of the year, not only considering the visitors of the city, but also the people that live and work during these days. Another interest case comes from the Ministry of Transportation in Spain. Since 2017, they have replaced their traditional survey with three big data projects based on mobile phone data. The first one was to test the technology back in 2017. The second one was during COVID-19 to generate basic daily mobility indicators to help the ministry to understand the impacts of mobility caused by the pandemic. The third one provides a complete analysis of mobility across Spain, covering over 3,000 study areas from 2022 to 2025. Key outputs included daily indicators of total mobility flows generated with only 3 days delay, integration with transport supply and demand data across all modes. This means ferry systems and train systems as well, to generate monthly indicators by transport mode for interurban trips and for the cities of Madrid and Valencia, and biannual information on road choose modes using map match techniques. Compared to the previous national travel survey, this approach drastically reduced cost and time while expanding the scope of information collected. It is also an open data access project, allowing different stakeholders to explore the data generated using mobile phone data to improve transport and mobility all over the country. Here, I invite you all to access the information in the link below. To finish this section of population and mobility analysis, we'll talk about tourism. Tourism statistics are essential for evidence-based policymaking and are also linked to several Sustainable Development Goals, including Goals 8, 12, and 14. Traditional tourist statistics rely on surveys and administrative data. While these sources have strengths, they also have limitations, particularly in terms of coverage, timeliness, granularity, and data quality. The use of mobile phone data can not only help overcome these limitations for traditional tourist indicators, but also for tourist events like sport events such as the Olympics or the World Cup, or major meetings like the UN Conference for Climate Change. Mobile phone data can also be used to analyze the mobility and behavior of people attending these events and support the protection of natural and cultural heritage. An interesting example of using mobile phone data for tourist indicators comes from Indonesia. The country discovered that, according to international benchmarks, tourists coming from neighboring countries actually account for 30% of visitors, far higher than the 7% estimated using traditional methods. For instance, mobile phone data show that between Indonesia and Timor-Leste alone, close to 100 visitors cross the border each month for shopping purpose, visiting relatives, and other activities. As a result, Timor-Leste was recognized as one of the top 5 contributors to visitors' arrival in Indonesia once mobile phone measurements were applied. This insight has been crucial in putting this border region on the tourist map, guiding new investment in infrastructure, tourism development, and cross-border events. Another example comes from Madrid in Spain. In recent years, the city has been active promoting tourism and looking for ways to better understand visitor mobility. To support this, a platform was developed to analyze tourist indicators. The platform allows authorities to classify areas according to their tourist activities using cluster techniques and to forecast the number of overnight stays by foreign visitors during a period of time. This kind of data-driven approach helps the city to plan more effectively, target investment, and improve the overall experience of tourists and residents during peak tourism periods. To move close to the end of our webinar, we're going to talk about the last group of indicators, socio-economic applications, with a closer look at poverty mapping. Poverty is one of the most important problems of modern days. It represents a major loss of human potential. Traditional approach to measure poverty rely heavily on data census, which may, in many low and middle income countries, are either outdated or unavailable. Mobile phone data offers an opportunity to complement and update this information between census. In this course, we highlight 2 indicators. First, the mean health index, which reflects the average socioeconomic status of households by combining information in access, house conditions, and access to service. This indicator allows us to compare living standards across regions or groups, quickly identifying difference between regions and tracking progress over time. The second indicator, accessibility to basic service, measures the extent to which households can reliably access essentials such as water, electricity, sanitation, and healthcare. This serves as a critical indicator of social inclusion and quality of life. By analyzing accessibility, we can uncover regional inequalities and monitor improvements in service provision over time. As an example, we can see a national level prediction map of poverty in Bangladesh using mobile phone data. The red areas indicate poor regions with a zoom view of the capital, Dhaka. You can see the red areas are mostly in the southern part of the country and in the north-south of the country, highlighting the importance of this indicator. In this study, research combined mobile phone data, remote sensing, and geographic information systems tools. The last two tools provide detailed information on land cover, infrastructure, and environment condition, while mobile phone data capture population's behavior and mobility patterns. The results show that by fusing datasets, it's possible to create accurate, high-resolution poverty maps. This approach offers a powerful complement to traditional census methods and allows for regular updates of poverty estimations in countries where traditional data collection is limited. Now let's move forward to the conclusions and recommendation, which is a very important part of our course. We have seen several policy applications, but which ones are better suited for our country? To answer that, we need to assess the impact of the policy applications. Here we have a guide on how you can do that. So first, you need to ask yourself, does the policy application that I'm looking for or that I'm thinking about address an existing gap in official statistics in my country? The second and the third questions are related to data collection and quality. So first, you have to ask yourself, to what extent does it reduce data collection costs for a given indicator without compromising quality? So it improves, it reduces the costs of what we are doing now. And the second one is focused on the quality. To what extent does it improve quality for a given indicator without increased data collection costs? Four, how effectively can the output indicator support governance in making more efficient and informed decisions? So how important it is this indication to help us move forward with our development goals. Once we have analyzed the impact of policy applications, we need to ask ourselves, how complex is to implement it? So here we need to ask ourselves 4 other questions. First, what characteristics must the input mobile phone data have? This is really important, especially when we are talking with operators. So we are sure that the information that we receive, it's capable to generate the information that we need for our policy application. Second, how complex are the required mobile phone data process algorithm? This impacts directly on the technical capacity team that we need to have to transform this data in information. Third, does it need to be combined with additional data sources? This is also very important because if the answer is yes, then we need to know where we can find these data sources and how we can integrate it with our algorithms. And fourth, what level of accuracy is required for the output indicators to be useful for decision making? So not just generating an indicator, but ensuring the quality and the accuracy of the indicator. This is really important for decision making. With that, I end the sections a bit earlier than I was expecting.
Data. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day further. And goodbye.
Goodbye.